Hello there, Internet. My name is Jim Hustwit. Welcome to another live broadcast going live on Facebook and on YouTube. And tonight, the topic of conversation is mental health, with the caveat that I'm not a mental health professional. However, I think anyone within the creative fields, whether you're a music producer or a composer or a musician or an artist, at some point you face major mental hurdles in what you're doing. So whilst I certainly can't, really offer any solutions, I think just by very virtue of having the conversation, that's an important part of it. And I certainly share my experiences because it's certainly things that, some of the issues we're going to talk about, like fear of failure and imposter syndrome, are things that I have absolutely had to deal with during sort of part of my musical journey. So if you are watching and if you can relate to anything, by all means, please feel free to drop me a comment in the comment section. If you would like to join me and actually have a discussion in a kind of Zoom style way, then let me know again in the comments and I will ping you a link and we'll get you up on screen. Easy, Jim. So first off is fear of failure. And thank you very much to Raya. Sorry, I haven't got your name right. For sort of raising this, because it is sort of very something that I can absolutely relate to. For those of you who don't know me, my musical journey I've come to music quite late in life, and I do wonder whether part of that is, for many years I was scared of failing. Before I started doing music properly, I used to tell people I wanted to be a music producer. And yet it took someone asking me, do you produce a lot of music, to realize that actually, no, I didn't. And actually, when it came to sitting down and writing or producing music, I would find 100 things to do other than actually writing or producing music. All of a sudden, like hoovering would become, an attractive proposition instead of doing music. And I was kind of essentially resisting. It's what Stephen Pressfield calls resistance. If you haven't read his book, The War of Art, really good read. Highly recommend it. I'll include a link in the show notes. But he talks about resistance. It's the thing that stops you sitting down and creating. So whatever it is, and fear of failure is obviously a huge one, a huge part and parcel of that. But I think also what is really important to note is that it's totally normal. Even I watched The Round Table starring Hans Zimmer, Alexandra Desplat, Danny Elfman, all of the sort of big Hollywood composers, and all of them said that still, even now that they're at kind of like the highest echelons of film composition, when they get a new project in, they experience that sort of self-doubt or fear of not being able to deliver. So it's a completely normal part and parcel of being a creative. I think it's just obviously a question of how we manage it. And I think certainly for me, I used to put a lot of pressure on myself. I was scared of failing because I felt if I sat down and wrote for a few hours and I didn't create a masterpiece in that time, then I would I'd feel devastated. I'd be gutted. But actually, that's a completely sort of unrealistic and unfair expectation for me to put on myself. I was putting a huge amount of pressure on myself, and there was one quote which I share with you from, I think it was Tony Robbins, I'm not 100% sure, but he said, "Write for the bin." Okay, writing for the bin is the idea of sitting down and creating and being prepared to throw it away at the end. By entering that headspace, you are being unattached to the outcome. And I think by doing so, you relieve the pressure on yourself. So that's helped me massively. When I sit down to create, I'm not expecting to create a masterpiece. I'm just having fun creating. And if I take that pressure off myself, 9 times out of 10, something good will come of it. Actually, no, 10 times out of 10, something good comes of it. Because even if I don't achieve what I want to, like I didn't today with what I was working on, even if I don't achieve exactly what I wanted to, something will come out of it. And when you listen back to it the following day, you'll have learned something, or something will resonate. So yeah. So if you can, write for the bin and sort of create a level of being unattached to the outcome. There's a really good quote from Jim Carrey in one of his sort of addresses to a college in the US. And it's like he says, you can fail at what you don't want to do, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love, which I think is brilliant, and is bang on. So yeah, if you're just joining us, we're talking about mental health in the music industry, fear of failure. Shout out to Ollie Barton, loving the relevance of this, Jim. Massive props to you. Massive props to you, sir. And also Adrian, evening Jim, bit late tonight. Yes, mate, you are. What time do you call this? No worries. There is no expectation for you to be punctual at all. Cool. So that's fear of failure. I think another major element which Ray brought up was imposter syndrome. So it's imposter syndrome is that sort of, it's just basically feeling like a fraud. And again, it's like something that I can so relate to. So by way of a little story, when I moved into this studio, I was, fairly fresh into my musical journey, a few years in, and the guys in the studios next to me were, 10, 15 years in. And, one of them was sort of my mentor and an incredible composer and producer. And I was so intimidated by that. The very fact that these guys, everything that they were doing, I saw it as a sort of like a level up from what I was doing. Hi, Callum McIntyre. Welcome. He says, "Hey up, big man." You're the big man. We're talking about imposter syndrome, Callum. For those of you who don't know Callum McIntyre, he is a singer-songwriter who writes incredible songs, but one of his songs, Song 26, is about, well, it's very much about mental health. It's about self-doubt. It's about, the sort of process you're going through your life. But anyway, imposter syndrome, it's feeling like a fraud. It's feeling like you don't belong. And I think certainly with the guys that I was working with in the studios next to me, who were kind of like a level above me, I felt very much like a fraud. But also, like, I've turned up to jobs whereby, so I don't have any formal compositional qualifications at all. I studied music at school because I played the clarinet and the saxophone. I did a GCSE in music. I didn't do it at A-level because I was worried about the theory and scoring side of stuff. And then I didn't do it again for years and years and years. So whenever I'm in a room with people who are sort of qualified, I've worked with the National Youth Theatre, and there's been kids in the theatre who are more qualified than me to be sort of running a kind of a session, a music session. So it's something I can totally relate to. And I honestly don't have any kind of real gems or pearls of wisdoms of how to overcome that. Again, I think it's natural, it's part and parcel. But I think it just boils down to that kind of, in that split second, in that moment where you are feeling like a fraud, you're just basically making a decision as to, okay, well, I can counter that and allow that to sort of dominate me, and I can sort of give up. Or you can say, okay, no, I feel like a fraud, but what can I do? So with the guys in the studios next to me, who I felt were kind of like infinitely better at what they did than I was, I would sort of go, okay, let's look at what they're doing. I'd talk to them. I'd get them to listen to my music. I'd get them to give me their thoughts and opinions on mixes, on sort of production techniques, on my writing. I'd listen to their tracks. I'd sort of ask to have a look at their Logic projects, and I'd sort of look at what they were doing and sort of go, okay, cool. How can I implement some of that in what I'm doing to help me level up? So it's just in that split second. It's like, what are you going to do? How do you react in those moments when you feel that? You can either sort of like shrink away or sort of rise to the challenge. And there's a classic thing as well, like if you're going to play tennis, then in order to get better at playing tennis, you generally play against people who are better than you. You don't play at someone who, like a child, because you're going to win every time. But by playing someone who's better than you, that's going to force you to raise your game. So when you feel imposter syndrome, I think just try and kind of turn it on its head and sort of, use it to your advantage, and sort of look at how you can leverage that to level up. Jensen, hi, nice to see you. Jensen says, hiya. And Ollie Barton says, in response to Song 26, tune, which in spite of the fact that I produced it, I do believe it is an amazing song. Song 26 by Callum McIntyre. There you go, Callum, some free promotion for you. So there you go, fear of failure, imposter syndrome. And the other thing that Ray mentioned in terms of mental health, if you are just joining us, we're discussing kind of mental health in the music industry, and specifically fear of failure, imposter syndrome. And I'm just about to talk about self-comparison, because again, it's like all of these things I have massively and still do suffer from to a certain extent on a day-to-day basis. But I think, first of all, knowing that it's completely normal, that you shouldn't beat yourself up about it. It's totally normal. It's just deciding how you react to those feelings in any given moment. So self-comparison. There's a brilliant quote by a guy called John Wooden, who there's an amazing talk on YouTube, TED Talk, with this guy John Wooden. I'll post this quote and his name in a second. But he was the most successful college basketball coach in the US of all time, and he's just kind of like an inspirational leader. Bear with me, I'm copy and pasting this quote into the. Here you go. And he said this: "You should never try to be better than someone else, but you should never cease trying to be the best you can be." And I think when I heard that, I was just like, oh man, it's so true. Comparing yourself to someone else is like comparing blue to red. It's so subjective and so fruitless and so pointless, but yet we kind of feel compelled to do it. But I think this gives it some perspective. It's like you don't compare yourself to other people, but you never cease trying to be the best you can be. And I think it's a subtle but powerful shift. And I kind of think if people can kind of get over that, I think critical listening is important. So I talked about this in one of my other videos about, being able to listen to other people's creations, and obviously we're talking about music, so whether it's compositions or productions, and go, oh man, I really like that, but don't compare yourself to that and go, oh, why am I not as good as that, whatever. It's like, wow, okay, what are they doing that I can sort of like try to implement in my writing, my productions, to sort of level up a bit. But yeah, that John Wooden quote is amazing. And I think that idea of critical listening, but don't be sort of too critical on you. I think critical awareness of knowing what you're doing, but don't beat yourself up, and just sort of be playful with it. There is no threat. There is no threat from other people within an industry, and I think sometimes, certainly as composers, producers, people tend to see other composers and producers as competitors. But I have found personally that collaboration with other producers and composers and musicians is kind of one of the most rewarding things. And it's a mentality. I think it's a scarcity mentality. If you feel that someone else is a threat to you, it's because you feel that there aren't enough, resources are scarce and there's not enough for everyone. Whereas actually there's no shortage of resources, but sometimes there's shortage of resourcefulness. Wow, I'm firing out the quotes today. That's not mine, by the way. But yeah, so yeah, to that end, self-comparison, compare yourself to yourself rather than other people. If anyone's got anything they'd like to throw into the mix here, or any comments, then first of all, if you've ever suffered from that yourself, if you've ever sort of suffered with a sort of debilitating comparison to other people, let me know in the chat. If you've ever suffered from fear of failure, like I have on so many occasions, then again, let me know in the chat, or even imposter syndrome. And if you've got a particular story to share, let me know in the chat. If you want to come up on screen right now and Zoom with me, like a Zoom style conversation, then let me know. I appreciate that sometimes talking about mental health stuff can be a bit intimidating, but at the same time, I think by very virtue of having the conversation, things can kind of start to shift. And so I'm kind of out of stuff to talk about. So if you want to get involved, then let me know. If you've got any comments, then let me know. And yeah. So I hope, Ray, I hope for you, I hope that was kind of useful in some way. As I say, I don't pretend to have any of the answers. All I can do is kind of share my thoughts, feelings, and experiences, and I hope that that might inspire you or help you in some way. Oh wow, okay. So this is from Adrian. Adrian's saying that being there, he's a church organist, but never had formal training. Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we feel that without having sort of formal training, that somehow we kind of not not up to it, or we're somehow sort of imposters. But it's not the case. And he's saying as well, after 20 years, you kind of shrug it off. I suppose, yes, there is that. There is, with time, you become a bit hardened to it, and with time, you sort of go, actually, do you know what? None of that matters. It's all about the end product, and whether it brings you joy, rather than kind of whether or not you're fitting some kind of mold or any sort of other expectations. So yeah. So there you go, guys. I hope that was useful. I'm doing a YouTube and a Facebook Live every night this week from 6 p.m. and possibly even continuing into the future. So if there are any burning issues that you have within the music industry, any challenges you face, so that can be mental health related, but it could also be production, it could be mixing, it could be writing, it could be marketing. If you've got any issues at all, then let me know in the comments. Alternatively, you can email me, library@larkmusic.com. So if you send me through any questions or issues you're facing, I will look to sort of do one of these lives talking about that very subject. Alternatively, let me know in the comments right now. Oh, hang on, we've got a comment here, so let me just check. Hang on, let's see. Okay, I'm going to share this comment with you. This is interesting, Jensen. I have a home studio, and obviously things are made worse with COVID, but there is something you make sure you do every day to stop yourself from feeling trapped or getting cabin fever. Massive one, mate, massive. This studio that I'm in here came off the back. It was a friend and I set this place up for that very reason, is because working from home, you have this huge confusion between your home environment and your work environment. There's all of a sudden there's no separation. They just merge into one. So I think at the moment with coronavirus, a lot of people are still in the kind of honeymoon period of like, oh, this working from home's great. You know, I just get to be at home. I don't have to commute, etc., etc. However, with time, it's a slow and cumulative effect, but with time, you start to go a little bit stir crazy, working and living and relaxing in the same environment. So these studios were set up for exactly that reason, Jensen, because it provides me with a psychological separation. It's like when I leave home and come here, I'm in music mode. I'm in my flow. I'm doing my thing. When I go home, I switch off. I don't check emails when I get home. I don't do anything like that. When I was working from home, just make sure you get out regularly. Go out for a walk mid-morning, go out for a walk at lunchtime. I used to get on my bike and just cycle around circles around the area that I lived, which is a bit foolish. I could have just gone a bit further afield. But also I think what's really important is try to meet up with other people. So Aaron, the guy that I set this place up with, we'd meet up for a coffee fairly regularly in Crouch End, and we'd just shoot the breeze. Because again, the thing is when you're working from home on your own, assuming that you are on your own, you have so little human interaction, and you eventually start to realize that a lack of human interaction starts to make you go a little bit crazy. Don't mind if I do. So yeah, definitely build into your routine some way of getting out and some way of contacting and interacting with other people. I know it's hard during coronavirus, but you can still go for a walk and sort of walk 2 meters away from someone. So yeah, I hope that helps, mate. But I feel you. So good luck with managing that. It's a tough one. But be strict with it, with your routine. Okay. Hey, Bryce Kagan, you want to jump on this? Okay, mate. I'm going to send you a link, Bryce, so that you can actually come on screen. Come on screen. I've got to be careful with what I say. Here you go. I've just posted a link in the chat. If you would like to join me on screen and chat right now live, then hit that link and I'll let you in and we can sort of chat. But Bryce, with our lifestyle, do you think we're better prepared? Yeah, I think so. Bryce is asking. Hang on, let me share that question with you. Bryce is asking, with our lifestyle, do you think we're better prepared for this year of isolation or more affected by it? I think we're possibly more prepared for it because we've experienced it and managed it before. But at the same time, as I say, I think a lot of people are still very much in the honeymoon period of working from home, and I think it's the going stir crazy sort of happens maybe sort of slightly longer term. So yeah, I think I was probably better prepared for it, but it's still tough because it's like my routine. Even though I've got a separate place to go to, my routine is broken. I can't break my routine. Work, home, work, home, work, home. There is there's nothing else in my life other than work and home at the moment, which normally isn't a bad thing. And I'm pretty hermetic in lifestyle generally, but I would like to go to the pub, or I would like to just go somewhere that isn't my studio or home. But yeah, cheers for that, Bryce. Bryce, very talented composer. Callum, have you found that issues with mental health and experimenting with vulnerability through music can be a positive expression? I feel like channeling these difficult feelings can often produce great work. Yeah, man, absolutely. I think every piece of work that I do is somehow some kind of expression of that. But yeah, it's a tough one because, I mean, I think for someone like you, Callum, because you are a singer-songwriter, you're vocalizing your feelings and emotions. So I certainly think that for for you, there's a huge amount of vulnerability, and I think there is for anyone sort of composing or producing as well, because you've got to put your love and care and attention into something and then put it out into the world. For some people might not like it. Some people might not even listen to it, as some of my earlier work is testament to. But by doing that, you're having to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You're having to allow yourself, and I think this is where fear of failure comes from. Sometimes it's like we don't want to feel like we're failing. We don't want to feel like people don't want to listen to our music, but actually, it's part and parcel. And yeah, I think actually musical expression is an amazing way to sort of get in touch with those emotions. But I think then sometimes some people maybe do that, but then are afraid to share it with other people. Whereas actually, I think there's some power in that. Oh, here we go. Callum's jumping on. Going to add you to the stream, Callum. Here we go, Callum McIntyre.
Hello.
Hi, Callum. How's it going?
Good, thanks, man. It's good that you're doing this. This is cool.
Yeah, well, it's I think it's kind of certainly an important subject, unlike a lot of the other subjects that I'll be covering, which is different importance. But tell us what about your personal experiences?
Well, I'm just interested in your experience really, because obviously, as you know, and as I've sort of shared in this, that for an artist, it's quite easy to I don't know, have a vehicle for those feelings and thoughts with songs and with music. But I guess, do you sort of see production and sometimes composition as like a form of escapism from those feelings, or, rather than channeling that sort of those feelings of I don't know, doubting yourself or being in a bad headspace? Do you sort of look to the work to get away from that, or do you kind of use it to sort of fire you up?
That's interesting, man. I think probably a large part of it is actually escapism, yeah. Because certainly for me, when I get into what's what people call creative flow, you kind of get immersed in this kind of creative flow, and you just sort of I disappear into it. Like I can miss lunch, I can sort of miss meetings and stuff because I'm so immersed in what I'm doing. And I think there is an element of when I'm in that, like nothing else matters. Whatever else is going on in my life at any given time, all of that kind of disappears. But then I suppose, like drink or drugs or whatever, as soon as I sort of come down from that, those issues are still there. But then maybe there's a meditative element as well. Maybe actually, during that time period, everything else is silenced. Maybe that can indirectly provide some clarity, in the same way that when you sit down to meditate, it's not like everything goes, all sort of your problems will go away. But because you're present and you're focused in that given moment, you maybe get a bit of perspective on actually in that present moment you're safe and all is well. There's only what happening right now actually matters, and then it's when the mind runs away to worrying about what happened in the past or what might happen in the future that's all, when the anxiety or. But yeah, it's a very interesting point. I mean, was it for you? Is it kind of escapism, or is it dealing with...
I think from a writing point of view, it's been a really really good, I guess, forum to express those feelings that I find difficult to express sometimes. And just by sitting down to a piano, and sometimes I don't necessarily sit down to write a specific kind of song, but through working out chord progressions, or just I don't know, a subject will just sort of come up, and sometimes it feels very therapeutic to write, and quite cathartic to get those feelings out through music. And I think there's been so many examples over the years of artists who really express their private lives or things that are difficult to express through their music. And I think that can sometimes make the best music, when it's raw and it's honest, and because I feel like you really sort of access the artist, I think, when you really see into their soul, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so from a songwriting point of view, especially when it's there's so much other stuff going on, if I don't always have the time to really just do music all the time, it can be great to just sit down and be like, okay, this is my time for me, and I can really express what I want to express through it. Yeah, so yeah, totally. I've always found it a really good vehicle for that.
Well, I suppose in some ways it's the weird thing is, like, the reason that we're sort of doing this live today on the subject of mental health is, like, just by virtue of saying something out loud, it's like, I think with the tendency is to try and deal with stuff internally, but it's amazing how just saying something out loud will in of itself provide a bit of perspective. And certainly songwriting is just an extension of that, whether you're talking to a therapist or a friend, or whether you're just sort of expressing yourself through song, you're saying something out loud. And I think that in of itself can be, is the stuff is great. Is
Yeah,
hugely
definitely.
cathartic.
I completely agree. And I think also interesting, obviously at the start of the chat, I'm talking about imposter syndrome, and sometimes it's amazing because I've heard other people talk about it, and people that you think are almost experts in their field um, speak about it as well. I feel like almost at every level, nobody knows exactly the right way to do it, and everybody had to start with zero knowledge at one point. And I think it's that thing of, I always say it because I'm being an actor as well, just blagging confidently. If you're confident enough and have confidence in yourself to blag it and pick up the necessary skills on the way, you will eventually have that skill set because you have done it so many times and you've just had the right mindset about it, that you are now the right person to therefore give advice to other people. But it's really, really comforting, I think, for people that look at people in positions of importance, or people that feel like they've got a lot of knowledge and think, oh shit, they also don't know, they also are unsure. And I think that also makes everybody feel a lot more relaxed about everything.
Well, that's it. I found it hugely reassuring when I watched this round table conversation with like Hollywood's best composers, Hans Zimmer, Alexandre Desplat, Danny Elfman, and some others whose name I can't remember. But when you kind of realize that these guys who are at the top of their field, who are getting paid, they're endorsed by studios, they're getting paid megabucks to do what they do, they still experience that fear when they start a project. Because obviously, you're working with someone new, so it's like, can I provide, can I tap into that person's vision and deliver what they're looking for? And there's always that sort of question mark. So yeah, it's massively reassuring when you know that people at the top of their game are also experiencing that very same thing. And as you say, it's just mindset. It's like you can never completely remove any sort of sense of fear. It's a given that at some point you will experience fear, you will experience imposter syndrome. The question is, in that moment, what do you do? It's your actions and how you do it that kind of defines you. And as you say, just jump and the net will open. And even some of the jobs that I think of which have gone horribly badly, at the time it feels like I just want to open up and to swallow me. But with a bit of time you kind of realize, oh, actually it's not that bad, and I've learned something massively. Because I think that's also the thing, is like, actually you learn more from failing. You learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. Certainly with successes, I'm just like, right, cool, on to the next one. I don't even celebrate them. Whereas with failures, there's a huge learning curve there.
I think that's a great point. I think also, if the further you step outside of your comfort zone with things like that, and pushing yourself to step into the fear, I guess the bigger your comfort zone becomes. So it just gets bigger and bigger each time. And it just greatens the amount of things that you are able to do, I suppose, as well.
Definitely. The more you get out of your comfort zone, the easier getting out of your comfort zone becomes, or the bigger the step you have to actually take to get out of it in the first place. So yeah. Just a quick comment from Rhea. Yes, Callum, I agree. You are what you think. I know many people who can create successful careers simply by being confident and believing. Yeah, this is interesting actually, because obviously there's a lot of people out there I've sort of ended up working with who have seemingly had no real qualifications or skills at what they do, but they've managed to blag it. I think they're people who talk the talk, but like we were talking about at the beginning as well, it's also being able to walk the walk, and understanding that even if you can't initially, it's like riding a bike, isn't it? First time you jump on a bike, you didn't just sort of pedal off into the sunset. You probably fell on your ass because you were learning. So it's an iterative process, and with each time that you fail, you learn a bit more, so that you hopefully start to fail less, or at least then move on to other things which you can fail at instead. So yeah. Cool. All right, Callum. Well, a pleasure chatting to you online.
Thank you. Yeah, great forum.
And thank you. Thanks everyone who's sort of tuned in and sort of got involved in the comments. As I say, I'm going to be doing this every night at 6 p.m. this week. So if you've got any burning desires, challenges, questions, then do let me know, and post them in the comments or emailing me at. Hang on, let me get my fancy banner up. Where is it? Oh, there it is. library@larkmusic.com, and I will endeavour to sort of answer any questions I can. But for now, have a good night. Bye.